Good day, everyone. My name is Umair Ismail, and the topic of my presentation for this annual DFD APS meeting is different instability mechanisms in a transitioning boundary layer beneath an accelerating decelerating free stream. This work was carried out at the University of British Columbia under the supervision of Joshua Brinkerhoff. And basically, what we have done in this project is that we have performed a DNS or a direct numerical simulation of a laminar boundary layer as it evolves, develops, and transitions on a test surface. And this test surface is simultaneously exposed to external conditions that are reflective of a turbomachinery application. The overall idea is simple. We are seeking answers to basic questions like how the onset of transition occurs, how different instability mechanisms interact with each other, how they individually grow, and so on, while ensuring that the external conditions for this test case are reflective of a more practical problem. So let's begin. So the first slide deals with the motivations part of the project, some of which I've already discussed a few moments ago. The very first motivation listed over here deals with how we handle the leading edge. And the standard practice in most numerical work on boundary transition relies on including the leading edge effect by a change in boundary condition from a free slip surface as shown over here to a no slip surface. While this is appropriate for most conditions, it is still not a reflection of the truth. The actual case would be a leading edge with a finite thickness as shown over here, or as shown in this case. And this is exactly what we do. The body-fitted nature of our computational solver under grid allows us to have a leading edge that has a finite thickness. Similarly, the free stream conditions or the external condition on the top of the computational domain are reflective, in our case, of a low pressure turbine blade, which is a turbomachinery application. And so basically, we contour the top surface of our computational domain in order to get a favorable pressure gradient at this first half of the computational domain, and then in the later half of it, we have an adverse pressure gradient. This is similar to what you'll have if you directly impose a blowing suction sort of boundary condition on the top surface. Let's move on. Before we start looking at the actual results of our simulation, let's look at the simulation preliminaries quickly. Over here, we have a computational domain for the DNS. It's a schematic. So you can see that the inflow is imposed a certain distance upstream of the test surface. The objective or the reason for doing this is to reduce any numerical instability that might occur if the inflow plane and the test surface were very close to each other. You can also see that the free slip top surface of the computational domain is contoured in order to get the desired pressure gradient conditions. The flow solver in our case is OpenFOAM. Time integration follows the implicit Piso algorithm, while spatial discretization is done using central differences. The Poisson equation and the fractional time step method is solved using the conjugate gradient method, and the resolution quality as shown over here is actually quite good. The maximum grid spacing and viscous wall units is around 10 plus units, whereas the temporal resolution based upon the recommendations by Choi and Moin is also very good. Before we start looking at the evolution of structures and the onset of transition in terms of different instability mechanisms, let us look at the mean flow attributes and the free stream attributes, because they are very useful in neatly classifying different parts of the overall flow. I have three figures on this slide. On the very left, I have the streamwise variation of the free stream velocity as well as the streamwise variation of the skin friction. You can clearly see, in fact, before I start talking about that, you can see that the suction peak, which is indicated by this FP subscript, is at around 0.6 times the test surface length. So basically this dashed line over here is the location where the free stream velocity achieves its maximum. And it is also the point where the cross-sectional area for the computational domain is also at its minimum. So let's see over here. You can see that the mean velocity, in fact, the free stream velocity grows very rapidly and achieves a maximum near this free stream peak. And after that, as soon as it encounters the adverse pressure gradient, it starts decreasing but compared to the acceleration, this adverse pressure gradient is relatively mild. The skin friction is more interesting. You can see that there's a very weak separation bubble immediately at the leading edge, which is indicated by these very small negative values. And by x over L equal to 1, or by a small distance up till over here, the reattachment has already occurred. And after that, the favorable pressure gradient starts interacting with the flow, causing an increase in the skin friction, which reaches a peak just before the free stream peak. After that, the adverse pressure gradient starts affecting the flow. These two arrows indicate an actual transition. You can see that the skin friction clearly follows the transition pattern to turbulence that we typically see in boundary layers. It has a minimum where the transition begins, and then by this distance, the transition has completed. And after that, the flow is fully turbulent. This whole behavior is very neatly reflected over here in this figure in the middle as well. We have multiple quantities being plotted. We have the momentum thickness, we have the Reynolds number based upon the momentum thickness, and we have the shape factor. You can see that the momentum thickness grows very rapidly as soon as the flow encounters the adverse pressure gradient, which can be conveniently explained based upon the arguments of difference in vertical momentum exchange that happens as the free stream conditions vary. You can see that the Reynolds number based on momentum thickness at the very end of the domain is actually much higher, and it is sufficiently high based on these values of 800 and 1000 for a turbulent flow to be sustained. The shape factor as seen over here is also around 1.4, 1.5, which is typical of fully turbulent boundary layers. Finally, on the very right over here, you have the acceleration parameter, which is simply a numerical calculation of the free stream acceleration, or basically the pressure gradient. You can see that the maximum acceleration parameter has this value, which is above the critical acceleration parameter that is typically listed in order for the flow to relaminize. In fact, we will see this from later results that the flow does not relaminize even though the acceleration is so strong. And this is mainly because of the instability structures that are developed in the separation bubble upstream. Further downstream in the APG region, you see that the acceleration parameter is not so strong due to the mild adverse pressure gradient. So let's move on. This slide is just a quick summary of the main features or the main classifications that we saw in the previous slide. You have the first zone, which is basically a separation bubble zone in which the shear layer detaches. In the middle, you have the second zone, which I call the favorable pressure gradient zone. And finally, in the final region, you have zone 3, or the zone with a mild adverse pressure gradient. Let's move on to the more interesting aspects of this presentation and look at the instability mechanisms in the first zone, or the zone with the separated shear layer. In this slide, I have 3 figures. On the top left, I have the instantaneous velocity around the leading edge in the streamwise direction and in the wall normal direction. So basically, this is the side view. Similarly, over here at the bottom, I have the spanwise vorticity, whereas over here, I'm looking at the isosurfaces of Q contours. There are 2 main things happening in this separated shear layer. Well, you can see that the mean reattachment point for the separated shear layer is at around 0.1 in terms of this quantity over here. You can see that the inflectional velocity profile induces a KH sort of instability that results in the shedding of different vortices, and these vortices are then carried downstream by the mean flow. And these discrete vortices can also be seen in these Q isosurfaces by these discrete sort of structures that have a very long spanwise extent. You can see multiple of these over here, but they don't represent the overall picture, because very close to the wall, below this outer region of the inflection velocity profile, we have the small scale lift up of local structures as well. And it is the interaction of these small scale structures with these large discrete vortices that spawn these small scale structures and causes an onset of turbulence cascade, and then which results in these hairpin sort of vortices, basically these red structures that you see over here, which are basically hairpin vortices at different instances of their lifespan. So it is the mutual interaction of these discrete vortices induced by the KH instability and the local lift up that occurs very close to the surface that spawns this turbulence cascade and this amplification of disturbances. We can see this more clearly if we look at the frequency spectra of our results over here. So I take probes from at 4 different locations. First of all, let's look at the first and the second probe, which is basically slightly above the outer layer, outer part of this inflection velocity profile. So basically this figure over here, and we look at the power spectral density. You can clearly see that there is a very high energy content within this frequency span of around 50 hertz in width. And this is very close to, or this is exactly the same frequency range at which these vortices are being shed. And this is something that we have confirmed via visual inspection as well. However, in order to complete the picture, we also have to look very close to the wall. So basically this probe number 3, and we can see that there is also a very high energy content. Although you don't see an inertial range being forming, that you will see forming further downstream, indicated by this -5/3 law. But still you have energy at multiple scales and very significant amount of energy. And it is the mutual interaction of basically this region at number 3 with this outer regions at 1 and 2 that result in introduction of a turbulence cascade, which is clearly visible as you go further downstream. You have this incipient or an onset of the inertial region forming with this -5/3 law visible over here. Let's now look at the second zone, or zone 2, which is basically this favorable pressure gradient region that starts after the flow reattaches. Again, before looking at the instantaneous structures, let's quickly focus at the mean flow attributes. Again, I have 3 figures. On the left, I have the mean velocity very close to the wall in viscous wall units. And I have the velocity profiles at multiple streamway stations, basically indicated by these vertical lines over here. You can clearly see that as the flow moves downstream, there is an increasing there is an increasingly laminar looking mean velocity profile, which is indicated by an increasing extent of this velocity profile. So if you're familiar with turbulent boundary layers, you know that the viscous sublayer typically extends up to y plus equal to 5, which is what is the case for this red line over here. But as you move downstream, this black line covers an area up till y plus equal to 10. So the strong favorable pressure gradient forced in the stream bias direction causes the velocity profile to become increasingly laminar. And while this is the effect on the mean velocity in terms of turbulent transport, or basically the turbulent shear stress, the strong favorable pressure gradient simply kills off the turbulent shear stress. And you can see this in these multiple lines shown over here at the bottom. You can see that the turbulent shear stress in plus units, which is typically 1 in logarithmic layers for zero pressure gradient boundary layers, and it is typically equal to 1, and that's actually the velocity scale in those logarithmic layers. It has reduced to a very small value, even less than 0.1 by the free stream peak. So basically what the favorable pressure gradient is doing is that it is killing off, or it is basically extinguishing any vertical momentum transport due to turbulence. And while this is the effect on turbulent shear stress, the URMS is only slightly enhanced. So even without looking at the instantaneous structures, we can sort of get a picture or a mental picture that you have these structures that are being stretched in the streamwise direction by the mean strain, while there is very negligible turbulence transport in the vertical direction. And these structures are effectively frozen in that favorable pressure gradient region and are simply being transported in the x direction. And this is exactly what we see if we look at the instantaneous contours. Over here I have the instantaneous surface plots of very close to the wall, basically at this y location, for the u perturbation and for the v perturbation. And you can see that these small scale structures that was formed by the separated shear layer in zone 1, they're basically extended and they're convected downstream by the mean flow. So you get these elongated streaks, basically these high speed and low speed streaks with a certain spacing between them in this favorable pressure region. And these streaks are simply being convected downstream, and then they later on flow into the adverse pressure gradient region and have a profound effect on the transition that happens there. Before we look at the APG region, let's quickly look at some of the aspects of this favorable pressure gradient region. For instance, we look at the span-wise spacing of individual low-speed streaks, and you can clearly see that the spacing of these low-speed streaks, which is basically this lambda bar over there, is effectively constant in the favorable pressure gradient region. So basically in this region, so the streak spacing in absolute terms is not changing, while the disturbance energy or the amplification or the energy of these individual low speed streaks is slightly increasing, but it is effectively around 10%, which is well below the thresholds indicated by Brand and Henningsen for SINOS or a varicose breakdown, or basically for secondary streak instability to occur. So you don't have any streak breakdown happening in the favorable pressure gradient region simply because the favorable pressure gradient is so strong. It is simply extending or stretching the structures in the x direction, but still you do not have laminarization, even though the acceleration parameter is very high. Now let's focus on the third and the final region of our computational domain, which is the adverse pressure gradient region. But before looking at the individual instantaneous perturbation surface plots as the ones that are shown over here, let's quickly focus on the streamwise evolution of the disturbance energy of low speed streaks in the adverse pressure gradient part. You can clearly see that while the disturbance energy is higher than what it was in the favorable pressure gradient region, it is still lower than the thresholds needed for a secondary breakdown to occur. But despite this apparent failure, you can see from these figures and from the mean flow results that we shown earlier, the transition still occurs. So basically these thresholds, they are not very representative in this particular case, because we have a complex interaction of streaks on the upstream favorable pressure gradient region and the inflection velocity profile in the adverse pressure gradient. So it is the complex interaction of these two sort of conditions that induces transition to occur, even though thresholds for secondary instability have not been met. And so you have I plot multiple instantaneous fluctuation plots over here, again at the same wall normal location, but the numerical value is different because the delta or the boundary layer thickness is much larger in the APG region than it was in the FPG region. And you can identify multiple instances of SINOS instability in this figure. If you focus on this enclosed region over here, you'll see a span-wise meandering of a low-speed streak, this blue region. So for instance, this exact part over there, there's a SINOS instability in which the streak is meandering in the span-wise direction and then ultimately breaking down. You can also see additional instances of SINOS instability occurring if you focus on these boxes over here. And over here on the V perturbation plot, you can see that these individual instances of SINOS instability are reflected by turbulence spot formation and an abrupt change to turbulence in the V perturbation plot. So you can clearly identify multiple instances of a turbulence spot that gradually grows and coalesces with the fully turbulent region downstream. So basically the takeaway from this slide is that while the thresholds have not been met, you still have multiple instances of SINOS instability and turbulence spot formation, and transition still occurs. Next up, we have probably the most interesting slide of the presentation, where we show observations of multiple helical breakdowns occurring. So here we have an isosurface plot of U perturbation at a value that is negative. So basically what we are looking at is are multiple low speed streaks, and you can see in these enclosed boxes multiple examples of helical breakdown occurring. So basically helical features that are formed or individual streaks, and these helical features rotate as they move downstream and ultimately break down into turbulence and move away from the wall. So you can clearly see a helical breakdown occurring over here. Again, another one occurring over here. So I've only highlighted a few of them, but you can also identify a few others, even in this very small animation. While we're not sure if these helical breakdowns are actually modes, but you clearly have visual evidence of helical structures forming and then breaking down. And the reason why these helical structures happen is because of this complex interaction of the streaks coming up from the upstream region and interacting with the natural instabilities of the APG region. And this interaction induces these helical structures to sort of form and then ultimately break down into turbulence. So basically, to sum up, in this slide I have populated, this is just a previous slide where I've populated it with additional information that we have learned that I've learned from the previous slides. So you have the first zone in which you had the separation bubble. In the same zone, you had disturbance amplification, incipient coherent structures, and an onset of turbulence cascade. Then in the middle, you have the favorable pressure gradient region, in which, due to the strong mean acceleration, you had the dampening of upstream structures and emergence of streaks and very negligible vertical momentum transport due to turbulence. And finally, in the APG region, is probably the most interesting one. You had transition to turbulence due to the interaction of the inflection velocity profile and the upstream streaks from the FPG region. And you had multiple instances of sinuous instability as well as helical breakdown. So basically, this is the final slide. The main takeaway is that the external conditions, both the realistic leading edge and the freestream conditions, have a very profound effect on how the fluid develops, evolves, and progresses, and how transition occurs. So external conditions are very important. But probably an even more important takeaway is that in this animation or in this presentation, we have shown evidence of multiple instances of helical breakdown occurring. And the reason and why this is important is because earlier up till now, it has only been seen in cases where the streaks have been generated using freestream turbulence, or in cases with bypass transition. Whereas in this case, we do not have bypass transition. We have streaks that are generated by the instabilities further upstream. And it is these streaks that interact with the natural instabilities of the APG region and then cause a breakdown to occur and helical breakdown to occur. So that's the major takeaway of our presentation. So this is the final slide. In fact, if you have any questions, please contact us at these email addresses, and we will also be available at the designated time slots of our session.